Raphael's Portrait of a Young Man, painted in 1514, is a significant work from the Italian High Renaissance. The subject's identity remains unverified, though many scholars have traditionally regarded it as Raphael's self-portrait. The facial features are perceived by specialists as compatible with, if not clearly identical to, the only undoubted self-portrait by Raphael in his fresco, The School of Athens, at the Vatican. The portrait depicts a richly dressed and confidently poised young man, embodying the elegance and sophistication characteristic of Raphael's work during this period. Before World War II, the painting was part of the Czartoryski Museum's collection in Krakow, Poland. The museum, established by Princess Isabella Czartoryska in the early 19th century, housed numerous masterpieces, including works by Leonardo da Vinci and Rembrandt. These works were acquired by the Czartoryski family during their extensive travels across Europe, with this particular work being acquired in 1798. Interestingly, the provenance of the painting prior to its acquisition by the Czartoryski family in 1798 remains largely undocumented. Specific records detailing its ownership during the intervening centuries are scarce. In 1939, as Germany invaded Poland, the Czartoryski family attempted to safeguard their collection by hiding key pieces, including Raphael's Portrait of a Young Man, in a residence in Sieniawa. Despite these efforts, the Gestapo discovered the hidden artworks. Hans Frank, the German-appointed Governor-General of occupied Poland, took possession of the painting. He displayed it prominently in his residence at Wawel Castle in Krakow. As the war neared its end in January 1945, Frank transported several artworks, including Raphael's portrait, to his villa in Neuhaus am Schliersee, Germany. After his arrest by American forces in May 1945, many looted artworks were recovered, but Portrait of a Young Man was not among them. Its whereabouts have remained unknown since then, giving rise to significant speculation as to its whereabouts. One prominent idea is that the painting may now reside in a private collection, possibly in Germany, the United States, Switzerland, or Russia. During and after the war, clandestine art transactions were common, and it's plausible that the artwork was discreetly acquired by a private collector who has since kept it hidden. Some experts suspect the painting may even have been passed down through generations. Under this theory, its owners are either unaware of its historical significance or purposefully keeping it concealed to avoid legal or financial consequences. This theory remains compelling given the secrecy that often surrounds private art holdings. Another possibility is that the painting was destroyed during the chaotic final days of the war. This theory gained attention due to dramatizations like the 2014 film The Monuments Men, which portrayed German forces deliberately destroying stolen artworks. While no evidence confirms this scenario, the destruction of countless cultural artifacts during the war makes it a sobering possibility. If true, it would mean that the Portrait of a Young Man is lost forever, joining the long list of cultural treasures irretrievably damaged in wartime. A less grim but equally plausible theory is that the painting may simply have been misplaced during the extensive relocations of art throughout the war. In their efforts to safeguard or hide cultural treasures, officials from various countries moved countless artworks into storage. Some items became lost or forgotten in these vast repositories, particularly in the post-war period, when the focus shifted to rebuilding cities and infrastructure. It's possible that Raphael's work lies dormant in one of these storerooms, waiting to be rediscovered. Finally, there is the theory that the painting is held by individuals who unknowingly acquired it during or after the war. Looted artworks often changed hands multiple times, and some pieces were sold without their origins being fully disclosed. In this scenario, the Portrait of a Young Man might be hanging in someone's home, unrecognized for the masterpiece it truly is. Personally, I find this scenario somewhat unlikely, given the very clear quality of the work, and given that Raphael is one of the most famous painters of all time. Mary Frances Gregory, a 19-year-old woman from Parry Sound, Ontario, disappeared in February 1978 under circumstances that have baffled authorities for over 4 decades. Her case remains one of the most perplexing missing person mysteries in Canadian history. Every detail about Mary's disappearance, from the people she traveled with to the locations she passed through, leads to more questions than answers, leaving her family desperate for closure. Mary's journey began with plans for a trip to Palo Alto, California, where she intended to visit acquaintances. On February 15, 1978, she left home in the company of a male companion whose identity has never been publicly disclosed. This man later told investigators that he and Mary drove from Ontario into the United States via New York before traveling through several states. According to the man, they went through Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and Nevada. He claimed that on February 28, 1978, he dropped Mary off at a bus station in Las Vegas, Nevada. However, she never arrived in Palo Alto, and there has been no verifiable evidence of her movements since. The bus station in Las Vegas is a pivotal element in Mary's case. If the male companion's account is accurate, Mary would have been in possession of her luggage and intending to continue her journey alone. Yet, no one has come forward to confirm seeing her at the station. Given that this story has flown under the radar, some details are hard to come by. For instance, I've located some sources which say her luggage was recovered, and others which say her luggage was never recovered. If her luggage was recovered, the details of what she was carrying and where it was found have never been released. Additionally, there are no known bus tickets or records linking her to any departure. This lack of tangible evidence casts doubt on the man's story. Authorities have never revealed whether he was formally investigated, leaving questions about his potential involvement unanswered. At the time of her disappearance, Mary was described as standing 5 feet 3 inches tall, weighing approximately 110 pounds, with dark blonde hair and hazel eyes. Notably, she had a prominent mole on her waist. These details have been crucial for investigators over the years, as they've attempted to compare her description to unidentified remains found across North America. Despite these efforts, no matches have been made. For instance, her DNA was compared to the remains of the Perry County Jane Doe, a body discovered in Pennsylvania, and Sahara Sue, a formerly unidentified woman found in Nevada. Mary's family has remained vocal about her disappearance. They've speculated that she may have suffered from memory loss, leading her to become disoriented or unable to contact her loved ones. This theory finds some apparent support by the lack of any verified sightings or communications from Mary following February 1978. However, given the passage of time, this seems highly unlikely to me. Over the years, the Ontario Provincial Police, better known as the OPP, have revisited her case multiple times, yet no significant breakthroughs have occurred. The male companion's role in Mary's disappearance has drawn scrutiny. His account is the only narrative of her last known movements, making him a central figure in the investigation. While authorities haven't publicly accused him of wrongdoing, his failure to provide corroborating evidence for his claims raises suspicions. Moreover, his decision to part ways with Mary, leaving her alone in an unfamiliar city, has been criticized as reckless by some. Given that the police file is still open, the details regarding the investigation are still a closely guarded secret. The police may have a very good reason for not naming this male companion. For instance, he may have provided evidence that's not publicly known that clears him entirely. Adding to the complexity is the vast geography involved in Mary's disappearance, and the numerous police agencies involved spanning both the US and Canada. She and her companion allegedly traveled through one Canadian province and numerous US states, making it difficult to pinpoint where or when she may have gone missing. The distance between Parry Sound, Ontario, and Las Vegas, Nevada, is over 2,000 miles, with countless potential sites where something could have gone wrong. This vast search area has hindered investigations, as authorities in both Canada and the United States lack specific leads to narrow their focus. Another notable aspect of the case is the timing. In 1978, there were fewer technological resources available for tracking missing persons. Surveillance cameras were scarce to the extent they existed at all, and cross-jurisdictional cooperation between law enforcement agencies was significantly less efficient than it is today. These limitations likely contributed to the initial difficulties in tracing Mary's movements, allowing critical evidence or witnesses to slip through the cracks. Further, in 1978, the border between the United States and Canada was virtually non-existent in terms of the flow of people. Border agencies focused almost entirely on individuals attempting to smuggle goods across the border, and no records were kept of crossings. Notably, individuals could cross from Canada into the US without any documentation whatsoever. In my research, it appears that at this time it was entirely at the discretion of a U.S. border agent to ask for even a driver's license. The question of foul play looms heavily over the case. While there's no definitive evidence to suggest Mary was harmed, her complete disappearance without any subsequent contact strongly implies a deliberate act. Whether she was the victim of an accident, a crime, or another unforeseen event, the truth remains a mystery. If you have any information regarding Mary Gregory's disappearance, please contact the Ontario Provincial Police. Also, big shout out to patron Major Zilla for bringing this obscure and fascinating case to my attention. If you have any recommendations for this series, please join the Discord, leave a comment below, or shoot me an email. The death by coconut legend is a classic example of how an extremely unusual and rare occurrence can evolve into a widely believed myth. According to the urban legend, more people are killed each year by falling coconuts than by shark attacks, with the statistic often cited as 150 deaths annually. However, while documented cases of coconut-related deaths do exist, the scale has been exaggerated over time. The origin of this urban legend can be traced back to a 1984 paper titled "Injuries Due to Falling Coconuts," which was based on research conducted in Papua New Guinea. This study highlighted the dangers posed by falling coconuts, noting injuries and fatalities associated with these incidents. The study found that falling coconuts could result in serious injuries like skull fractures and worse, especially in tropical regions where coconut trees are abundant. However, the study never claimed that 150 people died globally from coconuts annually, and the author was only able to find a few accounts of these events. In 1777, for example, King Tetui of Mangaya in the Cook Islands reportedly lost a concubine when a green coconut fell on her head. However, this case is poorly documented, and some have argued this could be a euphemism for something worse. Other examples include a U.S. Marine who died in 1943 while sleeping beneath a coconut tree on Guadalcanal, and several tragic incidents in Sri Lanka and India. These individual cases, though rare, underscore the potential danger posed by coconuts when they fall from heights of up to 100 feet. Durandal, the legendary sword of Roland, a paladin under Charlemagne, holds a prominent place in medieval European literature. Renowned for its supposed indestructibility and sharpness, Durandal is central to various tales, most notably La Chanson de Roland. In La Chanson de Roland, Durandal is described as containing sacred relics within its golden hilt: a tooth of Saint Peter, blood of Saint Basil, hair of Saint Denis, and the clothing of the Virgin Mary. These relics were believed to imbue the sword with divine power, making it a formidable weapon against adversaries. The poem narrates that during the Battle of Roncevaux Pass, Roland, facing overwhelming forces, used Durandal to slay numerous enemies, including severing the right arm of the Saracen king. Fearing that the sword might fall into enemy hands, Roland attempted to destroy it by striking it against marble blocks, but Durandal remained unscathed. Ultimately, Roland concealed the sword beneath his body as he lay dying, alongside his elephant tusk hunting horn. Various legends surround Durandal's origin. One account states that an angel presented the sword to Charlemagne in the Vale of Maurienne, who then bestowed it upon Roland. Another tale from the 12th century Chanson de Geste Menet recounts that a young Charlemagne, under the pseudonym Menet, acquired the blade after slaying the Saracen Bremont in Spain. Additionally, the Song of Aspremont describes Roland defeating the Saracen Oman, son of King Agolant, and claiming the sword as his prize. Local lore in Rocamadour, France, adds another layer to Durandal's mythos. According to tradition, instead of dying with Durandal hidden under his body, Roland called on the Archangel Michael for assistance. With the assistance of Michael, he was able to throw the sword several hundred kilometers across the border into France, where it came to rest in Rocamadour. There, it was deposited in the Chapel of Mary before allegedly being stolen by Henry the Young King, who was serving as junior King of England in 1183. Numerous replicas have been created, though they have all been stolen, with the most recent replica having been stolen in June 2024. The historicity of Durandal remains a subject of debate among historians and literary scholars. While the sword is prominently featured in medieval epics like the Song of Roland, its existence as a real weapon is highly questionable. Most scholars argue that Durandal is a product of medieval romanticization rather than a historical artifact. One of the central points against Durandal's historicity is its portrayal in legend. It's described as containing sacred relics and being indestructible, attributes consistent with mythic storytelling rather than historical fact. Such embellishments align with the broader purpose of epic poetry, to inspire and glorify national or religious identity rather than document real events. Proponents of Durandal's possible historicity point to the medieval practice of creating legendary narratives around real artifacts. It's conceivable that a sword belonging to a notable Frankish knight like Roland, who is a well-documented historical figure, became a focal point for myth-making. Additionally, the Battle of Roncevaux Pass, where Durandal is said to have been wielded in a last stand by Roland, was a historical event, and Roland was slain in this battle. Quick reminder to hit that like button, tap subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the chill vibes coming your way. The urban legend of the Headlight Flash Gang initiation has circulated for decades, particularly in the United States and Canada. This narrative involves a gang initiation ritual where prospective members drive at night without their headlights on. If an unsuspecting driver flashes their lights to signal that the gang member's headlights are off, it allegedly triggers the initiation rite. According to the myth, the gang member is then required to pursue the helpful driver and slay them as part of the initiation process. The legend first gained traction in the early to mid-'80s, particularly during a period when gang violence was a heightened concern in many U.S. cities. The myth often resurfaces in times of societal unease, frequently being shared through chain emails, social media posts, or by word of mouth. Despite its repeated debunking by law enforcement agencies and myth-busting websites, the story continues to spark fear. What makes this urban legend so powerful is its adaptability. Versions of the story have been tailored to local contexts, with specific highways or neighborhoods often mentioned, making the threat seem more immediate and real. The myth taps into the existing fear of crime in big cities and reinforces a sense of vulnerability while driving, an activity that typically represents personal autonomy and safety. It also plays on the basic social instinct to be helpful. Flashing your headlights is a universal signal of goodwill, yet the legend corrupts this simple act into one of life-threatening risk. Kimberly Fitka Odoman, a 40-year-old mother of 7 and the tribal administrator for the native village of Marshall, Alaska, was reported missing on June 15, 2023. Her body was discovered 12 days later, approximately 30 miles upriver from Emmenak on the Yukon River. On the evening of her disappearance, Kimberly informed her mother that someone had hit her that evening and that she was going back to intervene in a fight. She didn't return, prompting her mother to report her missing the following day. Jackie George, Kimberly's best friend and leader of Marshall's search and rescue team, for over 15 years, spearheaded the search efforts. The community, along with volunteers from neighboring villages such as Russian Mission, Pilot Station, and Mountain Village, conducted extensive searches along the Yukon River. Despite their efforts, it was a couple not involved in the search who discovered Kimberly's body about 100 miles downriver. Alaska State Troopers didn't arrive in Marshall until 5 days after Kimberly was reported missing. This delay has been a point of contention among her family and friends, who believe that earlier intervention might have preserved crucial evidence. They reported finding signs of a struggle near her home, including her eyeglasses and handprints indicating someone had been dragged into the river. By the time troopers arrived, much of this evidence had been lost. The state medical examiner's office determined that Kimberly died by drowning. However, her family has raised concerns about the handling of her personal belongings, which were returned to them in a sealed, muddy bag. Upon cleaning the items, they discovered her phone, which was still operational, and identification materials that could have expedited the identification process. In October 2023, Kimberly's family attended the Alaska Federation of Natives Convention in Anchorage to share her story and advocate for justice. They wore custom hoodies featuring the missing and slain Indigenous women red handprint logo and the message, "Justice for Kim." During the convention, they expressed their dissatisfaction with the investigation's handling and called for greater accountability from state agencies. While the official investigation determined that her death was the result of an accidental drowning, her family insists that the police investigation was botched. Also, since I'm sure many of you are wondering, the Alaska State Troopers have advised that they spoke to the person who punched Kimberly and cleared that person as a suspect. Lana Patricia Derrick, a 19-year-old Indigenous woman from the Gitanyao First Nation, disappeared on October 7, 1995, near Terrace, British Columbia in Canada. Despite extensive efforts by her family and community, no trace of Lana has ever been found, leaving her family with questions and heartache that have endured for decades. Lana was a bright, ambitious young woman who was attending Northwest Community College in Houston, British Columbia, studying forestry. On the weekend of her disappearance, she had traveled home to Terrace for the Thanksgiving holiday. On the night she went missing, she reportedly visited her friend Clarice around 3 a.m. to borrow money and invited her to a party. Clarice declined the invitation, and this encounter is the last confirmed sighting of Lana by someone who knew her personally. Another unverified report suggested that Lana was later seen at a gas station on Highway 16 near Terrace, often referred to as the Highway of Tears. This stretch of road has gained notoriety over the years for the alarming number of disappearances and slayings of women, most of whom are Indigenous. The circumstances surrounding Lana's disappearance remain a mystery. Investigators from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, commonly known as the RCMP, launched a search soon after her disappearance was reported, but the efforts were fruitless. Lana's family has been vocal about their dissatisfaction with the initial investigation. Her aunt, Sally Gibson, recalled the community's frustration when official search efforts were called off after only a short time. The family and community members continued to organize their own searches, combing forests, rivers, and other areas near Terrace in hopes of finding Lana or uncovering clues to her fate. Fortunately, Lana's family continues to keep her case active, organizing events and engaging the media to call on further investigations of Lana's disappearance. If you have any information about the disappearance of Lana Derrick, please contact the British Columbia RCMP. On the evening of August 22, 1990, Cheryl Henry, 22, and Andy Atkinson, 21, embarked on a date that would tragically become their last. The couple met at Bayou Mama's nightclub in Houston, Texas, accompanied by Cheryl's sister, Shane. After spending time together, Cheryl and Andy departed around 11:30 p.m., heading to a secluded area known as Lover's Lane off Enclave Parkway in West Houston. The following day, when Cheryl didn't return home, her family grew concerned and contacted the Houston Police Department. A security guard discovered Andy's white Honda Civic parked in an isolated cul-de-sac with the key still in the ignition. Inside the vehicle, officers found Cheryl's purse and shoes, but there was no sign of the couple. A search ensued, leading to the grim discovery of Cheryl's body approximately 200 yards from the car. She was found face down, her hands bound behind her back with hemp rope. Her clothing had been cut from her body, and she had suffered 3 deep lacerations to her throat. The perpetrator had attempted to conceal her remains under wooden boards. Nearby, a $20 bill was found, an odd detail that puzzled investigators. The following day, Andy's body was located tied to a tree about 100 yards from where Cheryl was found. He was seated with his back against the trunk, his hands bound behind him. His throat had been slashed so deeply that he was nearly decapitated. Notably, Andy's personal belongings, including money and a watch, were left untouched, suggesting that robbery was not the motive. The crime scene presented several peculiarities. A golf club and 3 golf balls were discovered arranged in a line, pointing towards Cheryl's body. Additionally, 4 partially deflated balloons were found tied to a tree above her. These items appeared to have been deliberately placed, but their significance remained unclear. Investigators collected DNA evidence from the scene, but initial efforts to identify a suspect proved unsuccessful. The case remained unsolved for years, leaving the families of Cheryl and Andy in anguish. In 2001, a letter was sent to the Houston Police Department, postmarked in Houston, stating, "If you want to know who killed C. Henry and A. Atkinson, it'll cost $100,000. The note instructed investigators to reply in the classified section of the Houston Chronicle. Despite following these instructions, no further communication was received, and the lead went cold. The consensus belief appears to be that this was actually a cruel practical joke. A significant development occurred in 2008 when DNA evidence from Cheryl's case was matched to a 1990 essay of a 30-year-old dancer in Houston. The victim had been attacked in her home by a man wearing a fishnet stocking over his head, black gloves, and dark clothing resembling a uniform. He had bound her with duct tape, placed a bag over her head, and assaulted her. The attacker had also inquired about her boyfriend by name, indicating he had prior knowledge of her. This connection led to the release of a composite sketch of the suspect, described as a white male in his mid-30s, approximately 6 feet tall, weighing around 180 pounds. He was described as having dark blonde to light brown hair and possibly a mustache. Despite this advancement, the identity of the individual remained elusive, as his DNA did not match any profiles in the national database. In the years that followed, investigators explored various avenues to identify the perpetrator. They considered the possibility that the suspect frequented local men's clubs, given that Cheryl allegedly worked at one, and the earlier assault victim was employed in such an establishment. Additionally, the suspect's attire during the assault suggested he might have had a background in security or law enforcement. Advancements in DNA technology offered renewed hope. In 2017, the Houston Police Department's Cold Case Squad began exploring the use of familial DNA testing. This technique involves searching DNA databases for profiles that share significant genetic markers with the suspect's DNA, potentially leading to relatives and, ultimately, the suspect. Given that they have the DNA evidence from the individual who committed the heinous act, and given advancements in forensics, I anticipate it's only a matter of time before the perp's caught. In the meantime, if you have any information regarding the tragic slaying of this young couple, please reach out to the Houston Police Department. If you want to support my work further, please consider checking out the YouTube membership or Patreon. You can support for as little as $1 a month, and there's some cool little perks. Anyway, peace out, everyone. As always, love you all, and thank you for all your support.